everyone.
Morning.
It is 8:30, a little after 8:30. We'll call this meeting to order. Our first item of business, excused absences.
Sorry, good morning. Member Lynn Rabeau has let us know that she would not be here, and Commissioner Sassi is on.
There she is. All right.
It's there.
All right.
So just Lynn.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the excused absence of Director Rabeau?
So moved.
Support.
Support?
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, public comments on any of the agenda items we have this morning. Seeing none, we'll move on to conflicts of interest.
Yes, I do have a conflict of interest with action item number 2, Seymour Condominiums. My employer is the general contractor.
Okay, thank you. All right, agenda item number 5, minutes approval from our January 24, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to our action items. Action item 1 is the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 2025-2029 priority plans. Jono? Oh, sorry. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good, thank you. Good morning. So what we have, your first item this morning is a request to recommend the fiscal year 25 budgets, essentially, for the Brownfield Authority's Operating Fund and local Brownfield Revolving Fund to the City Commission. So a reminder of what you have in front of you. We did print these out, so I hope you have on top a large document that says Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Operating Fund only. So we'll start with that one. The next one is your local Brownfield Revolving Fund. So what you're looking at, again, is obviously a lot of numbers, but what this provides for you is both the fiscal year 25 request and a little bit of historical information as well as projections into the future. So starting from left to right, for comparison and reference, we have the final actual revenues and expenditures from fiscal year 23, and a reminder that that is July 1st, 2022 through June 30, 2023. Then we have a couple columns related to the current fiscal year 24, and so you're seeing your adopted budget and then actual revenues and expenditures as of recent March, and then our projections, our staff projections for where we will end the year. Those projections are important because they get us to an estimated fund balance at the end of the year, which is our starting point for fiscal year 25. So just to confirm, those fiscal year 24 estimate numbers will not be exact. They are our best guess at this point in time of where we will end up a couple months from now at the end of June. And then fiscal year 25 request is obviously the most important today. That is your budget that we are recommending to you and asking you to recommend to the City Commission for the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. And then we have projections going out into the future just for planning purposes. So with that explanation, just highlights from the last year, we did add 6 projects to the Brownfield program, representing about $254 million of investment. And you know, we've had obviously growth in the program and a busy past decade or so. The last 7 years, we added 46 projects, over $1 billion of investment, and almost 2,200 housing units. So specifically, a few things I want to point out on the operating fund before we move to the revolving fund. This is where all of the program administration is accounted for. You'll see that in kind of the middle category under administration. This is staff is your largest expense, but this is these are all the costs associated with running the program. And this is where all of your tax increment financing projects are accounted for as well. So every project that we capture taxes for and then reimburse a developer transfer for eligible costs. All of that is accounted for in this fund, and that's why this is obviously a larger portion of the overall budget than the revolving fund. So there are 75 total active projects included in this budget, 15 pending completion of construction. We also assist the DDA with their program that's very similar, their development support program, by administering that program for them. For fiscal year 24, I think a couple things I want to point out. You'll note that revenues are coming in below projections. I'll point out that that is really only because we budget to receive all of the revenues from approved EAGLE grants, Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. So you'll note the last revenue line there, we budgeted over $1.8 million and expect to receive only $100,000. We expect to receive those revenues in the future as those projects progress. Other than that, you will also notice that tax increment revenues came in significantly higher than projected. So what we're seeing is growth in assessed values. We're also seeing some activity in the market that is uncapping properties and resulting in pretty significant growth in tax increment revenues. But it's representative of history as well. We're seeing just continued growth outpacing our somewhat conservative estimates, and I'll get to the adjustment we made to that going forward. From an administration perspective, you'll also note we're underspending there, pretty much solely related to staff vacancies. So you'll see the staffing expenditures are going to come in more than $100,000 under budget. That's because we have vacancies that have been unfilled for some time now. And other than that, we are continuing to effectively run the program with less than 5% of the overall budget going to administration, and keeping our commitments to the private developers that we're working with. For fiscal year 25, a couple things I want to point out there. Starting on the revenue side, we did project more rapid growth in tax increment revenues. Just that's what we're seeing, and so we're letting go of our conservative estimating a little bit and projecting 5% growth. Realistically, that's probably going to be low as well, but that is the statutory limit on assessed value growth, absent any transfers of property. So we're sticking with 5%. I'll note on the fourth row there on the revenue side, under your fiscal year 25 budget request, you'll see a negative revenue of $1 million. What that is a transfer of fund balance to your revolving fund. So on the next budget we'll look at, that will be a positive revenue. And that is revenue that can be used to provide grants and loans to projects. So what we're seeing in the operating fund is just continued growth in our fund balance. It's larger than is required. It's larger than is really consistent with best accounting practices. And so we have an opportunity to just transfer some of that money to make it available to priority projects. We will continue to budget for the EAGLE grants to be able to fund those as those projects take place. On the expenditure side, you'll note a pretty hefty jump in staff costs. We're happy about that. That's adding 1.75 FTEs to our staff to help run the program for next year. We're hopeful that we can fill those positions by next year. And then just ongoing operations of reimbursing developers, paying out grants, and financing debt associated with the downtown market project. So for fiscal year 25, we do end up with a negative a deficit, an annual deficit. But as your memo points out, that is intentional. It reduces our fund balance and provides $1 million of additional revenues to the revolving fund to finance grants and loans for priority projects. I'll stop there for a moment before going to the revolving fund and see if there are any questions or clarifications on the operating fund priority plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jono.
I think I know what timeline you meant for the new positions. You mean hired by the fiscal year start?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, not 25, right? Okay, thank you. My comment as well, I think, from the staffing perspective, I know we talked about that a lot here in the last year on the authority, and had also it was also discussed at our economic development project team. And I think just given the amount of projects that we're working on, connecting with multiple state opportunities that are existing because of their surpluses in ARPA and other dollars, I think even that staffing is conservative, and I'm glad we had a couple other departments who had staffing ads, and I think John and team moved on that quickly. So I was glad to support that at the commission level and glad to see that in this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. John, I just have two comments. One, you mentioned the DDA is funding the EDC team's administration of those projects. Where is that accounted for in the operating fund budget here?
So it's a good question. It really is not. The way that will show up is in a reduction in staff costs compared to what we're budgeting. That's work that Christian largely does for the DDA, and as he does that work, he bills his time directly to them, so that would reduce the impact to the Brownfield fund, but it's not a significant amount. Christian's pretty efficient at that, so it's not anything that would have a material impact on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, just a little clarification on the memo indicates that the fiscal year 25 budget accounts for the withholding of the 1.4 million. If I know we've talked about the transfer of the 1 million to the revolving fund, but could you maybe just clarify that a little bit more, how we got to the 1.4?
Yeah, so this is a budget, obviously, and this is not where we'll end the year. The 1.4 million is the amount that we are authorized by law to withhold as our administrative costs associated with running the program. We try to segregate our administrative costs into that middle category. So we have for fiscal year 25 a proposal that would result in $1,120,972 of administrative expenses. Other administrative expenses that that $1.4 million can be used for is funding of the environmental site assessment grant program. That's $206,000 for fiscal year 25. So that gets us close to the 1.4 with a little bit of wiggle room. So the way we facilitate that in practicality is that these are projected tax increment revenues. In 3 weeks or so, we will get a captured value report from the assessor. And then Christian and Tricia Chapman and Roberta Cahill in the Treasurer's Department will do some work to determine the actual allocation to each project. And we will determine how much we exceed that $1.4 million by. And there will be a calculation for each project that will, for example, if our agreement says that the Brownfield Authority will keep 10% of the revenues from a project, it probably will be something like 8.643% or something like that. Sure. To get to the 1.4 million and treat each project equally across all 75 projects. So it does add some complexity to the program, but as you know, we've worked over the years to increase that cap from 150,000 to 500,000 to 900,000 to now $1.4 million to make sure that we can self-fund this program as it grows.
Thank you, Jono. Any other discussion on the operating fund budget?
Just a kudos to staff for doing a great job and creating a situation that is a model for authorities, other authorities throughout the state of Michigan.
Thanks. So if you want to flip to your next large page there, that'll be your local Brownfield revolving fund. Just a reminder that this is the fund where we don't account for any of the administration of the program, but this part of the program is funded through the operating fund. And what you see here are revenues coming into this fund, primarily from tax increment revenues transferred from the operating fund, to provide grants and loans, to fund our environmental site assessment grant program. You'll see that $1 million in fiscal year '25 as a one-time bump. And then we've got a couple miscellaneous revenue sources, repayment of loans that have been approved either from funding from this fund or from a previous EPA revolving loan fund that we have since closed out. So we're looking at revenues for fiscal year '25 of $2.4 million. That's a big number for next year, and largely a result of that one-time transfer of $1 million. And then on the expenditure side of note, using the formula in your policy, we have $206,219 set aside to fund our environmental site assessment program for fiscal year '25. And then down towards the bottom, you'll see a couple big numbers. $3.5 million is the amount that is approved and encumbered for projects that you have already approved but have not yet come back for reimbursement. So those are committed funds. And then that leaves about $5.5 million to invest in projects in fiscal year '25. We budget that way even though we don't know which projects will come to us and what requests will be made. However, it gives us the appropriation authority to approve grants without also approving a budget amendment when we approve those grants and loans. So, we really don't expect to spend $9.2 million next year, but if we need to, we can. I think that is summary of fiscal year '25 request. You can see the activity in fiscal year '24 and our projections going forward. That's those projections are based on what we know today, and as we have more projects approved and negotiate more agreements, I think it's fair to expect those revenues will increase over time. But again, we don't make assumptions about what types of projects and what values will be associated with them in the future. So overall, I think, Troy, you mentioned the work of staff. This is really pretty heavy lift, and there's a lot of people that contribute to this, but Christian and Tricia really do the bulk of the work, and continue to be impressed by the level of expertise, both from a program perspective, but also just accounting and financial perspective. This is a really complex program with many, many different components that feed into what we try to make relatively simple in these priority plans, and really grateful for their work. Overall, there's $27 million of appropriations here between these two funds, so very significant program. Obviously, of that $27 million of appropriations, 24 is directly invested into projects. The rest is sent back to the state for their grant and loan program, or to run the administration of the program itself. So we maintain administrative costs at about 5%, even as the program grows, and we're able to add staff. But this is our recommendation for you for fiscal year '25, to be recommended to the City Commission. And then as a reminder, City Commission will consider your recommendation, and then it would come back to you to be adopted as your budget for fiscal year '25.
John, well, thank you again. Clearly, you and your team consistently put a lot of effort and focus into this, so appreciate that, and it's obviously contributed to the ongoing success of this program. Is there any further discussion on the LBRF budget? Okay, with that, we have a motion out there.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next action item is a resolution approving and recommending a Brownfield plan amendment and conditionally approving a local Brownfield revolving fund loan agreement for the Seymour Condominiums project at 2550 Eastern Avenue Southeast. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Any abstentions? I think we've taken care of that.
Kaylee will abstain. So I'm going to give a brief introduction here before Jess comes up and presents the next couple projects. These are both, the next two items on your agenda are both projects that are coming to you under, what's becoming known as the Housing Tax Increment Financing Program that we've talked a lot about, was created as a result of a lot of work from a lot of stakeholders last year, adopted into law in July, and just wanted to provide a bit of a reminder of the work that we've collectively done as a board and staff and stakeholders. So you've seen this slide in front of you before. But just as a reminder, some of you participated in subcommittee work and others didn't. But after the legislation was adopted in July, we did convene a stakeholder group, or we did convene a subcommittee of the Brownfield Authority. Ryan Kilpatrick supported that work as a consultant at Housing Next to provide some market experience and data to inform the direction we were going. Staff did work with MISHDA as a new partner here and did some engagement with nonprofit and for-profit development groups as well. We have, on an ongoing basis, been kind of evaluating projects to make sure that the work that we've done and the interim guidelines that we've published are still workable, that they're achieving the intended outcomes, and done all the legal work to get to where we are today. So you did adopt as a board interim guidelines for the Housing Tax Increment Financing Program in October. We have discussed, even today again, that 2 staff positions were approved for this program in November, and we've been working on those. We are still in the process of application development and supporting program materials. It's somewhat contingent on the staffing, but we're doing the best we can. And at this point, we have a couple projects to bring to you. And I think important to remind you of the key components of the policy interim guidelines that were adopted by this board in October, especially as they are relevant to the projects that you'll be seeing this morning. So on the top right and bottom left there, you see homeownership subsidies and the local Brownfield revolving fund prioritization. So as a reminder, those grant and loan dollars have been prioritized for homeownership projects because of the way that those projects are financed. However, we did provide for strategic projects that are achieving important outcomes in the community and leveraging other program investments. So we provided for up to $100,000 per unit to be provided as a grant to affordable homeownership projects, but we'll also be working, we represented to you that we'd be working to leverage tax increment revenues, tax increment financing, where it made sense and where we could reduce the expenditures of grant dollars and still get projects done. So those are a couple things that I wanted to sort of remind you of. The other aspects that were adopted in your policy are included here as well, but those are going to be relevant to the projects that you look at today. And with that, I will turn it over to Jess.
All right. Good morning, everyone. All right, so I'm happy to be bringing to you the first couple projects under the new housing guidelines. The first of which, as Jeff mentioned, is the Seymour Condominiums project, which is located at 2550 Eastern Avenue Southeast at the site of the former Seymour Christian School. The developer is ICCF, and the plan is to rehabilitate the existing school building, add a second story, and then also construct a new 2-story addition. At the end of the project, it will result in 27 new for-sale residential units in a condominium development. The units will be a mixture of 2 and 3 bedrooms and will be all electric as well. 14 of those units will be sold to households earning at or below 80% of the area median income, and those 14 units will also be included in ICCF's Community Land Trust. The remaining 13 homes would be sold to households earning at or below 120% area median income. Total investment in the project is estimated at $13.6 million with construction costs of $9.9 million. And the developer is also working towards a 10% overall subcontractor participation goal for minority business enterprises, women-owned business enterprises, and then micro-local business enterprises, which is approximately $993,000 of the construction costs. ICCF is requesting reimbursement of just over $3 million for the Brownfield eligible activities that include environmental assessment, lead and asbestos abatement, and housing development activities, which you'll recall were added as activities that are eligible for reimbursement under the Brownfield program in the most recent amendment Jono just mentioned. So for this project, the housing development activities include demolition, site preparation, infrastructure improvements, and reimbursement to fill a financing gap in the project. And that needs to be associated with the development of housing units that are to be priced for income qualified households. For home ownership projects, the potential development loss, which is what we're discussing here, is calculated by taking basically what it costs to develop or to build each unit, and then the difference between that and what they sell the unit for after the project is completed. So the request for reimbursement of development loss, in this case, it's the largest eligible activity and is estimated at $2.16 million, which averages out to a subsidy of approximately $80,000 per unit for this project. So pursuant to your guidelines that you approved in October, the affordability period for home ownership projects is dependent on the subsidy that we provide as part of the program. In this case, the $80,000 subsidy requires 20 years of affordability. So ICCF will achieve that. Like I said, the 14 units will be in their community land trust, and the remaining 13 units, ICCF will file deed restrictions to maintain that affordability. Excuse me, as proposed before you today, the Brownfield plan does provide for the first $600,000 of reimbursement to be paid from a forgivable loan from the local Brownfield revolving fund. The remainder of the eligible activities would be reimbursed using tax increment revenues over a period of 23 years. And the way that we're using the tax increment revenues here is to help ICCF pay permanent debt that's issued by IFF for the loan, and it's coming from their Kent County Housing Revolving Loan Fund. After the time the IFF loan is repaid at the end of that 23 years, we expect that we'd be able to also pay back the $600,000 LBRF loan. So as Jono mentioned, we're using tax increment revenues here because there will be enough, just given the scale of the project. We expect that there will be enough revenues to help reimburse the developer and their IFF loan over time. And it also limits what we need to loan then from the LBRF fund. So that frees up additional funds for other projects in the future. With that, though, any portion of the LBRF loan that might not get repaid, so if there's ends up being insufficient tax increment revenues at the end of the day, anything that can't be repaid is converted to a grant. So there's no penalty to the developer if that doesn't get paid back. The plan amendment will be in place for the full 30 years that's allowed, and any remaining available capture after the IFF loan, after the LBRF loan, anything that's remaining would still be able to be captured and continue to add to the revolving loan fund as well in the last 5 years. This project also has received a lot of other support in addition to this request. So the city is also supporting the project with $600,000 from the Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME as we call it, from the Community Development Department. And then our office is administering the MEDC's Revitalization and Placemaking Program 2.0 and 1.0. But this is part of our 2.0 allocation, and we've given them a grant of $1.8 million for this project as well. They also have been to Planning Commission and received approval back in 2022 to rehabilitate and expand the building. And they've also done a significant amount of community engagement on this project as well. And now I'd like to invite Dakota Reel and from ICCF, and then Sarah Harper from Warner Norcross and Judd as well. Share some more info.
Hi, everybody. I don't have to adjust this mic very much. So I think Jess did a wonderful job introducing our project, but I wanted to touch on maybe a few more points about what makes this project so special, but also so difficult to finance in traditional means. So first and foremost, ICCF purchased this building in 2020. We knew that it did not score with traditional affordable housing funds. So we really were intentional about creating a unique program and really wanted to serve our neighbors with homeownership opportunities here. We started community engagement in 2021. During that time, or since that time, we've had 3 full-blown community engagement events. Every neighbor in that community of Alger Heights receives a postcard in advance of those meetings. So we've sent roughly 6,000 invitations to neighbors in that area. In addition to those large community engagement events, we've also had one-on-one meetings with neighborhood associations, the Business Association, Brownfield Park Neighborhood Association, as well as other stakeholders such as Tabernacle Church that is right next door. So after that was done and we adjusted plans to meet both neighbor concerns and to receive our special land use, we really started getting plans in order. As Jess mentioned, we have quite a bit of funding coming into this project, and we're very thankful. In addition to MEDC's RAP funding and the home loan that she mentioned, we've also received $1.98 million in missing middle funds, and we just found out about a week ago that we were also awarded an allocation from Hillary Skolton's office for an additional $1.6 million. What this allows us to do and why we need so much support is that this construction project does still cost about $13.6 to $14 million to construct. And we truly did not want to sell these units to our neighbors unless they were very affordable to the folks we're trying to serve. So as of right now, with this Brownfield loan and some of that housing TIF funds, we're looking to sell our 80% AMI units at $175,000 and our 120% AMI units at roughly $225,000. What this allows us to do is that those units can be sold right now, we think, to all household sizes right now, and kind of how much a mortgage would cost and things like that. We're also able to lower our HOA fees to less than $200 a month, which really, again, adds to the sustainability of those units for our neighbors. We did recently receive a value per unit for every unit here. And in the current market, we project that each unit would be worth on the market at about $390,000. So we do need all of that support to really not only make this project possible, but to essentially maintain that long-term affordability of those units. I think that's all I had.
I do have to adjust this a little. Good morning. I just want to start by saying thank you, especially to Jess and Jono and the entire Grand Rapids Brownfield team. Everyone has been incredibly supportive and worked really hard on this project. I don't have much to add on the project details other than to really emphasize how critically important the housing TIF is to this project. And Dakota and Jess did a great job of walking you through the numbers. There's clearly a large gap between what these units will be sold at to maintain affordability and make first-time home ownership accessible to a large group of people that it otherwise would not be, and what they could get in the market. So that gap will be filled with this housing TIF, and it's really important to the success and viability of this project. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and again, say thank you.
I think if you guys have any questions, we're happy to take those.
Sure. Well, first of all, Jess, thanks so much for the summary and the memorandum. This is obviously a very multi-layered, complex financing structure, so very helpful to kind of break it down and make it easy for our board here to understand. And I think the table also that you included that shows the breakdown between the 14 and 13 units and how this housing TIF actually works toward hitting that affordability target. Again, very helpful. And Dakota, thank you for doing some trailblazing on how the new housing TIF can actually make these projects work. I just have one question regarding regarding ICCF's Community Land Trust. So I think it was the 14 units were ending up in that. And is that structured such that those units are also restricted to be set at that 80% or below AMI for perpetuity?
Yeah. So ICCF's Community Homes Land Trust has existed since 2020. We've sold 20 homes so far, so this will be a bit of a jump. But the general concept of that is that once homes are sold through the Community Land Trust model, not only are they reserved for households earning 80% or of AMI or below, but we're able to somewhat control the resale price of those homes so that price actually remains affordable for our neighbors in perpetuity. So we sign an 89-year ground lease with all of our home buyers, and they agree to pass on the opportunity of first-time affordable home ownership to that next household or family.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so just still on that topic of that resale value, so can you repeat that percentage that you mentioned? Like if, a homeowner wanted to resell. First of all, a couple things. Can you mention, what that restriction is for them to resell it at? And then two, is there a certain allotment of time that they cannot sell the property after they purchase it?
Yeah, so the beauty of the land trust model is that there's no timeline. So in traditional affordable housing grant programs, there would be a time where you would need to repay some of that grant amount, or it would be less if you sold in 15 years versus 5, all that. So in the land trust, they could buy on a Monday and sell on a Wednesday. It doesn't really matter to our program. It's all the same. So for our homeowners, they share equity. So the difference between the appraised value when they purchase the home and the appraised value when they sell it. So any market rate differential in that time period, 25% gets added to their initial investment, and then 75% remains kind of as a silent subsidy for that home. When we've done research on this, we've found that share of appreciation and that growth actually tracks very closely with wage increases in a community versus housing market changes, which can be volatile and significant. So the idea is essentially trying to stay close to the income changes of a household or a community versus trying to play catch up in a housing market.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just being in real estate myself, I think it's a breath of fresh air to see what it is that you guys are doing with how, crazy the market is and so on and so forth. It's good to see what you guys are doing with providing affordable housing for sure. And I think the follow-up question that I will ask on my side is, as far as, what, it literally just slipped my brain. Wow, I can't believe that happened. Oh, I think it was You know what? It'll come to me. It'll come to me. So many thoughts coming at one time.
I can also just add,
Yep.
you know, with the 20 homes that we've sold so far, we've seen some amazing success stories.
Yeah.
Our cap right now on that program is 90% of area median income, unless there's a program asking for less. But our average household AMI is 57%.
Yeah.
89% of our home buyers are people of color. 78% are single woman households. So we've also sold 5 homes using Mishja's Key to Own program. We're really able to just take a step back, slow things down for our home buyers so that they can utilize some of the tools that aren't as accessible in the open market.
Yeah. It just came to me. In the event, like, you know, for competition, you know, I'm just curious. I'm thinking come summer 2026 now, right? You know, now it's time. You've already built everything, and now it's time to get people in the door and so on and so forth. How does that look like? How does that work? And then, I mean, how do you navigate a potential, you know, multiple parties being interested in a single property and so on and so forth? Does that escalate the potential the price of a particular home, or does that not factor in?
Yeah, so our home prices are set, absolutely. There's no negotiating or changing or fluctuating of that. By a set, I mean when we go to sell them. There could be slight changes and alterations based on hopefully less, right? If we don't have as much cost, we'd like to lower those prices. In terms of marketing and competitive of this program, we currently plan to list all homes on the MLS, and a huge part of that is based on our learning over the last 4 years with our program. And we're also starting some of those baby steps to get not only our buyers ready for these homes, but also our real estate professionals in the community. We just led last week a realtor training on community land trust and affordable home ownership trainings, really helping realtors understand how they can play a role in these types of housing situations. So really focusing on getting the word out. And you mentioned multiple offers. Our program has and will remain first come, first qualified, first served. So we really try to help people get as prepared as possible to fill out those applications, be qualified for a mortgage that will work on these homes, and then when they apply, they know that either wherever they are in the list of interested households, we will consider them in the manner of first qualified, first served.
Thank you so much.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Christian, can you get Kaylee?
She's in my office.
Oh.
Okay, our next action item is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a local Brownfield revolving fund agreement with Wellhouse LDHA LLC for 3 housing development projects located at 512 Highland Street Southeast, 32 through 34 Pleasant Street Southeast, and 1138 Cass Avenue Southeast. Do I have a motion?
Support.
All right. So the next project is being developed by Well House, who plans to construct 3 multifamily buildings to create a total of 8 new rental housing units. The units will range in size between 1 and 4 bedrooms and will be rented to individuals earning at or below 30% of the area median income. Well House is also pursuing LEED certification for these buildings as well. Total project cost is estimated at $2.4 million with $2.2 million in construction costs, and they do anticipate being able to create 2 new full-time jobs as a result of the project, with wages of $22.50 an hour. They're seeking a grant from the local Brownfield revolving fund for $150,000 for housing development activities, specifically for reimbursement to fill a financing gap similar to the last project. Well House has received various awards and grants for this project, including home funding through the Community Development Department for 512 Highland and 32 and 34 Pleasant, and it has been recommended by the Community Development Department for them to also receive home funds for 1138 Cass. They have secured a number of other grants, as I mentioned, and they are working with IFF as well for debt financing on the project. Absent LBRF support, the estimated financing gap in the project across all 3 is approximately $430,000, and they have secured so far about $2 million of other funding resources. If approved today, it will support just a portion of the financing gap, which is approximately supporting about $18,750 per unit. And the remaining gap is expected to be secured by Well House through their fundraising campaigns. They have received or are seeking approval for payment in lieu of taxes or pilot, which will eliminate the property tax liability on the properties. And because of this, tax increment revenues aren't anticipated here and not recommended to be captured by the authority. So Jono kind of went through your LBRF priorities a little bit earlier, and so this is a rental project, and your priority is home ownership, but we have seen that the need for the rental housing at this price point is significant. So over 1,300 units are needed by 2027 when looking at the housing needs assessment in order to meet demand. So approval of the grant will allow you as the authority to really a unique opportunity to support a rental project in this income range, and there are very few developers kind of targeting rents in this space. Additionally, the authority does have the opportunity to provide support to projects that are using other funding sources. So I mentioned home. This was something that you discussed at your December meeting as a strategy where you can support projects that are seeking and using home funds through community development, and something you are supportive of. So we're bringing that to you with this project. And kind of as an added benefit with home projects, there is a 20-year affordability period required for rental, new rental projects, and community development staff handles the sort of income reporting and things that come along with that. And then just another piece of this with the new changes to the law from July, LBRF projects don't need a Brownfield plan any longer. They also don't need city commission approval. So that really kind of minimizes the time as well as financial, financial aspect of working through the Brownfield program. So being a small project, this is really going to save them a lot of time and money as well. This would be the only approval required for this project until it's completed and they submit invoices for reimbursement. And with that, I'm going to ask Kurt Reppart, who's here to represent Well House, to talk a little more about what they do in the project.
Thank you. I'm a little taller than Dakota. Thank you, Jono and Jess, for giving Well House so much time to talk this through. Thank you for considering this request. This is a smaller scale project than the other 2 you're going to consider today, but it's a critical need in our community. All of these units will be permanently preserved for individuals who are earning less than 30% of the area median income. It's also a mixture of shared housing And given the text amendment conversations that the city commission's going to have in a couple weeks here, it's in some ways it's experimenting on those kind of concepts and how we can pull those off here in Grand Rapids. While I was still on the city commission, I served on the capital campaign cabinet for this project. And that's how I met John Glover. John Glover is the executive director of The Other Way. He's not able to be here this morning. He has so much experience working with this population from his time in New York and Detroit to here to Grand Rapids. I've learned so much from him, and I respect him so highly as a leader. In many ways, this is my dream project personally. I have another one that I'm working on that I hope to bring to you in October or so. But just a quick thing, Well House has 17 homes. We've done our work so far all through rehabilitation. So this is our first foray into new construction. We have 70 tenants, as was noted in the packet. This will extend our reach to almost 100 tenants that we'll be able to support. We require each individual that moves into one of our apartments to select a support person. So working with this population, it's challenging, especially if you're going to do shared living. And so every person that lives in one of these homes will also have a support person to help and walk alongside them. So I want to really thank the City of Grand Rapids for their major investment in these projects. The Wege Foundation has provided significant investment. IFF is going to give us a loan that they also don't typically make for this project. So we're so grateful for that. Probably the most unique thing that I see for this is that we've also received scattered site project-based vouchers from the Housing Commission. I believe the first of their kind in Grand Rapids. And if you award this Brownfield grant, that also allows us to get a project-based voucher for 1138 Cass and get that voucher in a non-competitive way. They can award that non-competitively to us, which again saves us time. And we don't have to compete. We're a small shop at Well House. There's only 3 staff and a couple of consultants working on the project. And so that helps us so we don't have to compete for those incredible resources that help with the affordability and perpetuity. So 32 Pleasant and 512 Highland have both received a project-based voucher from the Housing Commission as well. Last thing I'll say, all the ground floor, well, 2 more things. All the ground floor units will be ADA, and 84% of individuals who enter a Well House unit do not return to homelessness. So given the incredible need to address chronic homelessness downtown in Grand Rapids, this is a solution that's highly effective, and the average stay in one of our units is about 2 years, and then we can help them transition to permanent housing. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, you mentioned the topic of support person. Mm-hmm. Can you go a little bit deeper with that? Exactly what do you mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's not a licensed social worker or a case manager, but we allow our tenants to choose somebody that they feel comfortable with. If they don't have somebody, we have people that we recruit for that. We offer those people some training in terms of how to walk alongside them. We try to find people who are knowledgeable about the Grand Rapids resources. And then should they encounter a problem that's outside of their tenant relationship with us, that person can help them, whether it's substance abuse, getting food access, navigating, their car breaks down, all of those kind of things that might trip them up from losing their housing. They can work on that with them. We also have 2 housing specialists at Well House that then support people, but they're also another resource to the people.
You look like you were going to jump in as double Dutch. Nope. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Commissioner. Good to see you here. No surprise that you're working on a project like this because you were always the one that we all had the highlights and you had the thesis and dissertation on everything that was going on. So I was glad that I sat next to you. I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to highlight, I think, this is a really 30% AMI. This is what we typically hear people say. Glad to see 80%, 120% AMI projects. We need them at all price points, but to be able to put the capital stack together to get to this point, glad to hear that about the Housing Commission piece. And I think the connection piece that people need as they maybe have been chronically experiencing homelessness will be able to create like community as well, which is something that we often hear, as well as that shared support that I know some other projects in the past, particularly rental projects, just has gone away with either maybe HUD dollars going away from that and has created some other concerns. So I was glad to see this one on the agenda. I think it's an interesting mix, as you mentioned, getting into this new construction piece. Can you just highlight again, what was the amount that you all are still seeking for in fundraising dollars? Or Jess, you said, Jess is the one who said it, so
Yeah, sure.
you need to phone a friend.
Obviously, we're hopeful that you'll approve the home fund recommendation in a couple of weeks here. If this is awarded and that is awarded, our gap is really less than $100,000.
Okay, all right. That's what I thought I heard.
I wrote 2 proposals this week to
Okay.
local foundations for about 85 of that.
Okay.
And then we'll be following up with campaign
20.
pledges.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, thanks for sharing this, and thanks, Jess, for your work on this as well.
I have a question on that too. So can you walk me through how we got to the $150,000 request when you still have a larger gap? And then my second comment to that would be, are you familiar with the MSHA dollars, the My Neighborhood program, that is coming out April 1 application? You don't necessarily have, I guess it's rhetorical, but I want to make sure you have that information because that would be another source that would be a great resource for funding for this.
We're eager for April 1 to come and to get in that pipeline. My hope is that we'll be able to close this gap without approaching that fund. We have one other vacant parcel that I would like to do another fourplex on. But in terms of the 150, we sat down with Jono and Jess. I didn't come in, I'm not asking you to close our whole gap. We've got a team of people and we wanted to be realistic. And so that was the realistic number that they thought that was reasonable to request to you and would also really get us close to the end. So.
If I could maybe add a little context to that too. Jess mentioned that the revolving fund is pursuant to the conversations we've had. Priority is for affordable home ownership, and so Jess went through the justification essentially for, won't call it an exception, but for this investment as it's not home ownership. Every rental project at 60 or 80% AMI is going to have a gap too. And so if we were to provide grants to fill all of the financing gap for all of the affordable rental projects, we would have no money very quickly. And so there's not enough, there are very few programs investing in affordable home ownership, and so we have the opportunity to do that. So I think that was the consensus through the subcommittee conversation and the resulting policy that was adopted. And so what other relevant things from that conversation, as Jess mentioned, leveraging other program funds, so Home Investment Partnership Program reduces our administrative costs. And one other, last in dollars. So we want it to be, we want to be last in dollars, right? We don't want people to come to us as the default to fill a financing gap for a rental project. And so that's kind of like the challenge here to Kurt and his team. This is not the entire solution. We don't think that we are the entire solution for affordable rental on this scale, but as has been discussed, the demand, the need for 30% AMI housing, you can see the rent's $350 a month, right? Like that, it doesn't work, obviously. And so this is a place where we can invest. And through the conversation, we told you that we will not be on our own doing 30% or 50% rental.
Right.
We can participate, and that's what we're doing here.
Thanks for the refresher, Jono. Any other discussion?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm still new. Second meeting, second month. I just want to point out that this is just an excellent opportunity that we're seeing that you're bringing to us for infill housing, on some formerly vacant lots or some land trust land. It's important that we're knitting these neighborhoods back together and taking advantage of land that's already available, that already has infrastructure. And so I just want to say that I commend you for that. And this is also a great way to have kind of that pipeline of home ownership, right? You could see someone who might be choosing this opportunity from Wellhouse and then moving into something like the ICCF program. And so it's great to see that we have these, a variety of housing opportunities that we're focused on today on our agenda. So thank you.
1138 Castle was a land bank lot, so Jono knows that whole story. It was not an easy one.
Well, thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Jess. So we have a motion to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, our last action item is approval of the activity report for the Grand Rapids BRA's Environmental Site Assessment Grant Program as of March 2024. Do I have a motion? Support?
All right, so the last item, or action item, I should say. So this is a request for a $1,900 grant for the Environmental Site Assessment Program. It's for Pier 662 LLC, which is affiliated with Pure Architecture. They purchased a vacant and obsolete building at 662 Leonard, and they are rehabilitating it and turning it into a sort of indoor recreational facility. So there will be indoor pickleball courts, golf simulators, a bar, and a pro shop. So a really cool, exciting project. They only needed a phase one, so we're asking for support on that today. And we are supporting the project with an Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act exemption as well, which is moving forward in the City Commission process right now. Any questions?
So we can make the approval contingent on an invitation of the board to come enjoy the space?
I don't know about that. Jessica, what do you think?
I'm sure he would welcome you there as a paying customer.
Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
No. Sorry, no, not yet. Sorry. Yeah. Just that first one, yeah.
Okay, our next item is a discussion, an overview of the Grand Action 2.0 Transformational Brownfield Plan Project.
Thanks. So this is an introductory conversation for a large-scale project. Application has been submitted by Grand Action 2.0, an application for a transformational brownfield program project, many components of which are familiar to you, hopefully, if you're paying attention to the news, and other components might be a little bit newer. We are actively engaged, obviously, and have been for some time on these projects, reviewing the application currently, and from a timing perspective, intend to bring this back to you for a recommendation in April. But today, wanted to get a little bit more detail out in front of you and invite a friend of the Grand Rapids Brownfield Authority back to the City Commission chambers, Carol Wood, the Executive Director of Grand Action. So the project is represented to you on the screen here. Acrisure Amphitheater and then associated development adjacent to that. You'd have to flip that. Map there 90 degrees counterclockwise, I suppose. So the development is south of the amphitheater, and then the soccer stadium on the west side, adjacent to the YMCA on surface parking lots, and adjacent development as well. So large-scale project, and Kara's going to give you an overview of the different components. A lot of people working on this. Project partners, Grand Action 2.0, obviously, submitted the application to the Brownfield Authority, the City of Grand Rapids, as the property owner where the amphitheater is to be built, would be conveying that property to the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority. Kent County is obviously heavily involved as a member of that authority as well, an investor in the project, and then DGRI and its associated boards are the property owners over on the west side. So lots of things going on here. Again, those components of the project are the two cultural entertainment facilities, the amphitheater, soccer stadium, river trail development, and then two private developments as well. I'm going to just briefly give you a quick reminder on the Transformational Brownfield program, because you've seen this once before with Factory Yards, before I invite Kara up to go walk through the different components of the project. So it's not been that long since you saw the Factory Yards project, but that was a very different project. And actually a few things have changed since then. So Public Act 381, 1996 has been amended numerous times to kind of expand the program. We walked through that in more detail a few months ago, but you all know it as a very much an urban development program at this point, supporting all types of projects, including unique housing projects, as you've heard about today. The transformational brownfield component of the overall program is really to support those very large-scale transformational projects that are going to have significant impact on the community from community and economic development perspective. And you'll hear, I think it's clear, but you'll hear more detail about the impact that these projects will have today. Project eligibility is similar. Properties have to be either contaminated or functionally obsolete, et cetera. Really, the minimum, the important criteria is that projects have to have an overall investment of a certain size based on the community size. And for Grand Rapids, the minimum investment is $100 million. We have multiples of that included in these projects. And then importantly, the eligible costs and the incentive that can be provided to the projects are significantly escalated. Essentially all the hard costs, and then some are eligible costs under the Transformational Brownfield program. So all of the construction, restoration, rehabilitation costs are eligible costs that can be reimbursed. And then the taxes that can be used, frankly, from the Brownfield Authority and City of Grand Rapids perspective, are the same as traditional brownfield. But then in addition, there are all forms of state income taxes, state sales taxes, that are either captured and able to be reimbursed to the developer or exempted from the cost of purchasing materials for the project. So it is the Brownfield program on steroids, and that's intentional for projects like this that are going to have significant positive impacts on the community and the state overall. So with that, Jess, maybe can you pop the other presentation up, and I'll invite Kara Wood up to go over the project. Is your mic on, Kara?
There we go.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time to be able to do an introductory presentation on the work of our public-private partnership and the many people that are involved in bringing these projects to fruition. Certainly, Grand Action has a history of some past accomplishments that I don't think that we could imagine our city and our region without. And we're building on that past success in a very collaborative and community-minded way to continue that trajectory. So what we have for you today is just a brief presentation on some of the highlights of the project, and we can get into some of the details as well, but I think Jono's memo in your agenda packet nicely sums up the overall package of details. As I mentioned, we have significant public-private partnership activity going on. Kent County, Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc., the City of Grand Rapids, and the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority are all major partners in our work, but there are many others as well. And certainly we'll continue the
the legacy of a collaborative community vision around the redevelopment of our riverfront. So just a high-level overview of the project. What we are doing here is rare, and certainly, how often do you see economic development, business, government, philanthropic donors, and community leaders all coalescing around a vision for the redevelopment of more than 20 acres of downtown? It is quite remarkable. The total project investment is $748 million at this point, and these are early projections, and certainly that will get refined, but it is a very significant investment, and one that we want to be proud of as a community. It has the potential to drive 735 new housing units to our region, and employ more than 238 new full-time equivalent employees. Most importantly, the riverfront improvements themselves and a critical trail link that will connect to over 100 miles of trails across Kent County and the rest of the state of Michigan, which does not currently exist today. So that is an important element of the project that becomes available. And certainly more than $14 million of participation expected on the amphitheater and soccer stadiums alone is tremendous. And these are early projections. This is likely to grow closer to 30. So we're excited about the opportunity and the benefits that it will drive for our community. John showed you this overview of the locations, amphitheater and soccer stadium, along with their associated prospective private development opportunities. The Acrisure Amphitheater is a site of just over 10 acres, and it has the potential to house 12,000 seats and more. There are opportunities for us to, have 12,000 ticketed seats, but then obviously there'll be opportunities for more participation. Over 54 ticketed events per season, with many more events programmed throughout the year, and the hope would be that this facility would be used in all seasons of our climate, and it would drive more than 300,000 people to our region each year. The Acrisure Amphitheater has the potential to have a net new economic impact in Kent County of over $807 million over the next 30 years, and almost 800 jobs over that period of time, including the construction jobs that it will support. The location is the 201 Market site, where the city is preparing for their relocation off of that site to other locations throughout the city and other existing city facilities. And that project is well ahead of schedule, and we're making great progress on that effort. So right now we're slated to start construction this spring. The amphitheater investment alone is over $185 million, with the possibility of adding 48 new full-time equivalent jobs with wages well over $22 an hour. Beyond that, we've always talked about the potential for housing development on the site, and an exciting opportunity that we want to bring to fruition. So right now we're estimating about 475 housing units plus associated parking and an active riverfront use. This mixed-use development is aligned with the GR Forward Plan, the city's master plan, and many other plans that have been conducted on our riverfront. This will provide new recreation space, critical trail connectivity, and linkages to our near neighborhoods. This visual just represents conceptually what's possible and other examples of the housing types that could exist on our riverfront. Beyond that, there is a possibility that we construct a parking deck along with the surface parking lot that would assist and support the amphitheater and be the next phase of development before that housing development actually occurs. This is the future development potential if we were to add the housing development lining that parking ramp, as we've seen in past projects throughout our downtown area. So it adds a significant amount of density to the riverfront, but also those housing opportunities are quite remarkable. The investment in housing could be over $218 million with a couple of new full-time jobs, average hourly wages of over $24 an hour, and a parking deck investment that would be significant in a couple of phases, one for the amphitheater and then another to support the private development. Next, I'll talk briefly about the soccer stadium that we're working toward. This property is a little bit smaller than the amphitheater site, but it is located, as Jono mentioned, adjacent to the YMCA on the surface parking lots that are owned by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc., the DDA, and the YMCA. This, too, is a mixed-use development that would create an accessible and welcoming space for the community and be a draw for sports from youth to professional. This would house 8,500 seats with the opportunity to grow it to 12,000. It could host 17 professional matches with the possibility of adding other community events for other associated sports throughout the year, driving more than 164,000 visitors to Grand Rapids every season. The economic impact of this project over the next 30 years could be more than $388 million, just the stadium alone, and over 465 jobs to Kent County in construction and over the course of those 30 years. Pretty transformational work. The investment estimated right now in this stadium is $174.7 million, with 104 jobs, average hourly wages over $25 an hour. Here's a high-level site plan view of the 8.2 acre site that also shows at the right side of the drawing, the surface parking lot. That is the future development site where there is potential for what we're calling the Stadium District Tower. And so the soccer stadium site itself will have active uses in addition to the stadium, and you can see the large plaza on the left, lower left corner, where that would be the main entrance to the facility. But connections throughout the neighborhood for people to reach the site. Here's just an artist rendering of what that proposed Stadium District Tower could look like from the corner of Mount Vernon and Bloomrich, adding significant density along the highway there and increasing the amount of housing available in this neighborhood as well. 260 apartment units with investment of over $114 million and 84 new jobs, along with wages of over $26 an hour. High-level overview of timeline. Certainly the amphitheater is getting ready to commence. Construction's anticipated to start there spring of this year and completion by May of 26. So the hope is that the first concert would be hopefully in May of 26. Work on the Riverwalk or the public aspect of the River Trail could commence summer of 25 with completion in 27. Amphitheater apartments to commence summer of 25, complete fall of 27. Parking could start yet this summer with completion in 26, ready for that season to start. On the soccer stadium and the Stadium District Tower, the stadium could be ready this year with completion in 26, as well as the Stadium District Tower starting soon thereafter in 26. Completing in 28. So as you can see, the transformational anchor tenants, the amphitheater and the soccer stadium, are really those transformational assets that are catalyzing some of the additional private development that could come along as a result of those investments and really drive more vibrancy in our near downtown neighborhoods. At this point, I would welcome any questions that you might have and certainly thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Kara. There's a lot going on there. So for the amphitheater site, with the spring 24 construction start, do you see some concurrent activity still happening with getting the city relocated, or I guess what's that coordination look like with the construction team? And
Yeah, we've been coordinating for several months on that plan, and it's expected that the city's relocation plan will be complete no later than the end of April, but they are ahead of schedule. So the good news is progress is being made, and the expectation is that the city will be completely relocated off the site by May 1. And any opportunity we have to get work started sooner, we will.
So if you could just clarify the commitment to housing and what that looks like. So I know it's not in phase 1, and then you have the parking deck. So the potential obviously is great. But could you just walk me through and clarify what that commitment looks like, either, this project, or is it just catalyzing that additional investment in housing?
So the commitment to housing is that we will work with partners to develop that housing component on both sites. The DDA owns the site adjacent to the soccer stadium, and the Convention Arena Authority owns the site adjacent to the amphitheater. At this point, we don't have partners identified specifically for those at this point, but we are making educated guesses about what's possible there and continuing to flesh out those details so that we do have strong partners yet this spring in order to move these projects forward. So a lot depends on the partners and what they're able to do. It is a challenging environment right now, and so we're working through a lot of those issues, but certainly committed to increasing the number of housing units available on the site. And as Jana pointed out in his memo, we don't know what price points those will be at this point, so we'll continue to work through those details.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, just to build on that quickly, maybe this is more for Jono, but the memo mentioned an affordable housing agreement. Are we envisioning that there'd be a single master agreement for, all subsequent phases of housing, or would we have individual agreements with specific developers? What do you see happening here?
Yeah, so thank you. That question is really related to the Transformational Brownfield program, providing the opportunity for the developer to capture and use 100% of the income taxes paid by, state income taxes paid by residents of the residential units when they're completed. 50% of those taxes are available by default under the program, but up to 100% of those taxes can be captured if there is an affordable housing agreement with the local unit of government. And so we took advantage of that with Factory Yards, and what that looked like was 20% of the units being reserved for households at either 60% or 80% of area median income. What we are going to be working on over the next month before we bring this back to you is the details of the agreement for this project, who those agreements would be with, given the current status of not having identified developers. So likely property owners at this point, or other partners. But I think this project is different than Factory Yards. It's new construction. It is downtown on the riverfront, high-rise development, and it's more expensive. And so I think we're looking to remain open to options, whether that is similar to Factory Yards, where there is affordable housing provided at the development, or whether there might be an alternative of investment into another investment vehicle that creates affordable housing opportunities, which may be rental or home ownership around downtown or in other parts of the community as well. So I think those details are to be determined, but we will work those out over the next 3 or 4 weeks and make sure that we bring that information back to you in April.
Kara, thank you so much for the presentation. I always get so excited when I see major investments such as this into our community. When I was younger, I used to want to be a soccer star. When I was younger, like my favorite superstar, Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. I adore them. That never panned out, obviously. But nonetheless, I am curious, however, I know that soccer has been something that within our community has really gained a lot of attraction and interest within our Grand Rapids community as we get more and more diverse. But I am curious, however, specifically soccer, like why soccer? Why not a football stadium, a basketball stadium? Why soccer specifically?
That's a great question, and both of these projects are as a direct result of some studies that were conducted in 2017 and 2020 that really looked at the next 10 years of growth for our region, and an outdoor amphitheater and a presence of professional soccer was also identified. It's a growing sport. Certainly, we don't have a significant amount of professional soccer in Michigan, and if we are successful here, this would be a very high level of professional soccer in our region, and an opportunity for our community to be excited about, seeing themselves in the professional players. And we have a significant amount of soccer talent here that I've come to learn over the last couple of years, and from youth to collegiate. We have a significant amount of interest and enthusiasm for the sport. So it's been growing. So certainly the market analysis and feasibility studies that we did on professional soccer panned out and basically show us that this is a great possibility for our region and an important one. Consider the employers that have, employees that want to have a great quality of life and want to be able to go to a soccer game on a Saturday, but also have youth sport engagement with players for their family members, and also, other programming that comes along with professional soccer. The players tutor young people. The relationship with the YMCA is a great one, and the proximity to the Y is important. So I think there's a lot of great possibility for our region.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's perfect. And I think a follow-up question that I would ask with that is, have you kind of begun to develop partnerships with any, leagues or any teams that might see this as a hub for them specifically?
At this point, I'm focused on trying to bring the development of a soccer stadium.
For sure.
So I'm not working on actual team aspects, but certainly both professional leagues are interested in Grand Rapids as a location. And specifically, when we did our site feasibility analysis, they were interested in a downtown location.
Okay.
So being walkable to hotels and restaurants and bars and other amenities in our community was important to them. And so that weighed in on the site location decision that we made.
Thank you, Kara.
Hi, Kara. Just a quick soccer follow-up question, a quite boring one, I might add, but I think I missed what the short and long-term plan for parking at the soccer stadium will be.
Great question, one that we heard quite often in our community engagement sessions. So certainly, we are not building any existing or any new parking on site, and we are absorbing some of those spaces that are currently surface parking lots. And we did the analysis and count, so I think we are eliminating about 775 or so spaces. And there will be a little bit more demand as a result of the facility, but the infrastructure in the area is very supportive. So believe it or not, and I wish I would have brought my slide with me to show you, but there are over 16,000 spaces within a 15-minute walking distance, not including the on-street parking to the west in the neighborhood. So I think it's important to note that there's still a significant amount of surface parking and ramped parking in the area, and Grand Valley has been helpful in helping us understand the utilization of their surface parking lots or their parking deck, as well as other neighboring properties, like the city owns and operates the Scribner lot, which is one that people don't always recognize, but it's right there, available to the public, and something that we need to direct folks to. But there is adequate parking, and according to city engineering and mobile GR, we're continuing to work on any parking solutions that we could come up with. We've talked about shuttles, and we've talked about other options to make the game day experience a good one, and we'll continue to do that as well.
I should say, too, that Carol will be back here tomorrow for the Planning Commission meeting for the soccer stadium, and I'm sure there will be discussion of that as well. You can imagine part of what these projects will drive is more visitors to downtown, and so we hope that those visitors are not coming just to go to a soccer game, but that they're walking around and going to the restaurants in the area and don't need to park adjacent to the facility necessarily to enjoy all the other things that downtown has to offer as well.
Is the plan, it appears that both these projects could qualify for a brownfield, transformational brownfield, independent of one another, right? But is the plan to approve them as one, tie them together, or are we going to look at them separately?
This is one combined transformational brownfield plan that has various components. This will result in at the end of the day, there will be a transformational brownfield plan that's approved by this Brownfield Authority, the City Commission, I should say, will be considered by the Brownfield Authority and the City Commission and the Michigan Strategic Fund. And then that will result in a development agreement as well. My expectation is that at the outset, there would likely be one development agreement, but that there will probably be more development agreements that come along as additional partners are identified for that, the residential and mixed-use components as well. So the program is flexible. The program is flexible to deal with a project like Factory Yards, where there's one investment entity, one development group, one sort of financing structure, and also to deal with something like this that has multiple components, multiple project leads, and multiple developers, even if that occurs over time. So the intent is to combine these into one. There are benefits to doing that. It's a single process. The benefits of the projects kind of accrue between each other in some instances. And maybe most importantly is that if we can facilitate this process and work with all the partners and get approval of this transformational brownfield, that's really going to be the linchpin for attracting the private investment to complete the residential and mixed-use development as well.
Thanks for the presentation, Kara. And this is obviously a large undertaking. Appreciate Jono. If you all remember when we had Factory Yards, we did have a bit of a briefing like this. Again, we know that's not the same types of projects, looking for ways to be creative and support these different pieces. I did want to highlight some of what was talked about as it related to engagement, because I think that was a key component, I would say, of Factory Yards work. Kara, I don't know all the engagement sessions that you all have done, but I have known a number of people who have gone to them, shared some thoughts, provided some of those pieces. And yes, while we're not here to talk about the zoning changes that are in front of the City Commission now, I do think it is important to talk about sort of these, in the other projects that we talked about, very different today, we talked about, there was LEED certification, electrification, and while, we might not think about that in terms of parking, we need to continue to understand how can we have less of an impact on our environment, on our, future climate. And so these might seem like small things and projects, but I think they are really key to us hopefully achieving those goals that we have that are both talked about here with this new legislation and that we put into practice, I think, pretty quickly, the first ones in the state. Probably. No? Not going to claim it? Okay, that's fine. That's okay. Trailblazers, but recognizing what are these sort of offsets we're trying to do individually. And, I'm going to go on a little spring break thing. I'm going to go to Chicago. And, as all Grand Rapidians, we'd go to Chicago, we walk everywhere. But when we're in our city, we don't think about that as much. And I'm have that same bias as well. And so some of these conversations, I think, you're probably not going to get. When I started going to Grand Valley in 2000 downtown, I parked in the front row right in front of DeVos campus. That wouldn't happen today. And so I think a lot of this is our mind shifts, the opportunities that this has, communication that we can provide. We just went back to our dash of a 7-day service, which was really important. And so I guess I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, so apologies, but I wanted to highlight some of the community engagement. So could you just reinforce that again? Because I think that's what, at least for me, stood out when we were looking at Factory Yards, the real deep commitment to that. So could you share some of that, Kara?
Sure. So what's fresh in my mind is the work that was most recently done for the soccer stadium project, and the community engagement effort that was led there was multiple focus groups and And we also held an open house and a variety of other conversations that led to where we're at today. So when you talk about the environmental aspects, we will be sharing with the Planning Commission those elements in more detail tomorrow, and certainly can bring that back to this body as well. Couple of things to keep in mind when you mentioned the mode shift and really seeing more people walk longer distances in our region. And we're hopeful that these projects will help stimulate some of that activity. And so as a result, the infrastructure that'll be employed does allow for more bike and scooter parking, but also pickup drop-off areas as well as transit pickup and drop-off. And so we're working with all of the partners to make sure that we are employing a transit-oriented development model here and making sure that on special event days like we see in other venues downtown, that the same level of safety and circulation is underway. So there's been a lot of work in that. What other elements of community engagement did you want me to touch on, Commissioner?
No, I think that was it. I think to let people know on this body, again, we're here to consider sort of a narrow aspect of the plan. And I know that's important to our chair and the rest of us, like not trying to get too outside of ourselves, but also know that this is a big project and perhaps we might have questions and people might share things. Another question that has continued to come up was, in terms of sound and noise and amplification, and really letting individuals know that with any large projects like this, there are guardrails throughout the project to test things out. I'm making this seem very simplified. It's not very simplified, but at different percentage points throughout the project. So I think, again, sometimes there's some misinformation, particularly in large projects. None of these things, I'll speak for the city level, there are, again, these different pieces that are along the way to make sure we're communicating with those that are part of the development process and this unique, Grant Action 2.0. So I just wanted to point that out because obviously this is the most well-attended Brownfield meeting in a long time. Usually it's like one person. And so we know that there's a lot of interest, and I just want our body to know that that is not taken lightly, certainly by this department and the other city departments that are engaged in ensuring, how do we be a city that supports development and, hopefully these really exciting catalytic projects. So thanks.
So we had over 300 participants in the community engagement sessions, multiple neighborhood associations, business associations. I would encourage you, if you're interested in some of those finer points about sound, traffic, parking, the presentation at the Planning Commission will provide a little bit more of that detail for you, and certainly we can also provide that as part of our follow-up to your next meeting.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, just for reference for our board here, the last page of our project memorandum does have a nice summary of community engagement to date for this project. So between now and when Kara comes back next month, if there's any lingering questions about that, it's a great place to refresh there.
Do you mind?
I just have one quick comment, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Asasi for bringing up kind of the various aspects of transformation that can occur with a project like this and the role of this program. And I guess being the planner, I do think about those other aspects. And Kara, thank you for sharing the engagement approach and, connecting to the river. I appreciate seeing the river walk and that linear concept from north to south. And as you plan and think through the housing component, the way that our downtown residents and patrons access the river from east to west is also a really important connection. So that Bartlett Street and Williams and how those intersect into your site, I think will be really interesting as we focus on kind of the quality of the walk experience and safety and all those multimodal options, because that is part of our transformation, is how we move people in our community. So I know that's out of our specific realm, but I appreciate everybody thinking through what it means to be transformational. Thank you.
Do you mind bringing up the other presentation again, Kara? Thank you. I can't advance that from here. You scroll down. Thanks. Yeah, there is good, I think. So again, just summarizing the overall scope here and representing on this map. Kara mentioned at the outset the other projects that Grand Action has been involved in over the years, including the Downtown Market, Van Andel Arena, and DeVos Place Convention Center, as well as Civic Theater. You can see the scale of those, and I think you all are very familiar with the impact that those projects have on this community. And so we really looking forward to growing that, continuing to be a mid-sized city in the Midwest that is really a shining star and attractive to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, providing a high quality of life and really at an affordable competitive advantage is that we remain somewhat affordable compared to comparable cities. So really a large effort, big lift to get here today, and will be a continued big lift over the next couple months, but very important to continue to make progress on this and work, as Kara said, collaboratively with all the partners to make sure that we're doing our part so that the others can do their part, and we can all see these projects come to fruition over the next couple of years. So next steps, as I said, we will intend to bring this back to you with the final transformational Brownfield plan, details of the affordable housing agreement for your recommendation next month. In the meantime, we will be updating this economic development project team in a couple weeks, similar to today. And then after your recommendation, if that were to be recommended to the City Commission, that process would happen throughout the months of May and June, and we'd be on to the state, hopefully in early summer for the final approval, and then continue to just provide updates as these developments become more real, the different components of the developments become more real, and look forward to seeing the transformation of downtown Grand Rapids over the next couple of years. So this is not, there's no action today, just an update. That would conclude all of the items on your agenda.
Thank you, Jono, and thank you, Kara. I think the last couple items we have here, other business.
Just real quickly, I did want to mention, come back to the staffing conversation that we've had with an update on that. I do want to let you know that Jess has been promoted. So this is part of the process here. One of the positions that was approved in November was an Economic Development Coordinator 2, and that was a promotional opportunity for Jess. So she has been doing that for a couple weeks now. That means we have to post another position. So that's out there, and then we're making progress on the Business Manager position 2, and hope that we can have somebody at your next meeting. So although we don't have anybody, there has been incremental progress here, and we're getting there. But also to the same point of adding staff, I think you are seeing evidence today of what we told you was going to happen, which is this is more complicated work now with the housing tax increment financing, the evaluation, the underwriting, the negotiation, participation with lenders, and so on and so forth. It's more complicated, so we are doing that work, and we are looking forward to having the appropriate resources in the near future to do the work that we're doing today. So those are the updates that I have in other business.
Thank you, Jono. Any other public comment? Seeing none, move to adjourn.